I initially picked up Come Deliverance many years ago, hooked by the premise of stepping foot into an immersive world through the eyes of a noble knight. And yet, upon booting up the game, I realized Henry of Skalitz is anything but competent. The combat in particular felt unfair and clunky. Every bandit I faced parried my attacks like it was nothing, and after dying more times than I'd like to admit, I lost interest fast. And Sir Hans, he treated me like a lowly lapdog, making me walk behind him to our hunting destination as he traversed on horseback, which took over 10 real-life minutes. All because the game didn't think I was worthy of a horse yet.
Well, you'll just have to trot along behind me like a good dog.
Overall, I felt let down by the game I thought I was promised. At that point in time, my main critique of Kingdom Come would have been that the game just doesn't respect the player's time, so I dropped it for what I thought was for good. Yet, what if I was looking at the game entirely wrong? Henry wasn't a noble knight because I hadn't made him one yet. I would have to earn every piece of armor, every sword, and every bit of respect for my character. This is the mindset I adopted coming back to this game years later, intrigued by the announcement of a sequel, and this time, determined to see it through to the end. Nothing comes easy in Kingdom Come Deliverance, yet maybe that's why the game works so well. Beyond the brutal challenge the game presents, the open world of Kingdom Come Deliverance is extremely atmospheric. A big part of that immersion comes from the sound design. The world just feels alive, with the wind rustling through trees, animals populating the countryside, and the occasional burst of a flock of birds taking flight. And don't get me started on the lighting. Every sunrise, every sunset paints the horizon with a beautiful hue, and the way the light just peeks through the trees and reflects off puddles is downright mesmerizing. More than once, I found myself just pausing to soak it all in. The world itself isn't packed full of randomly generated filler content. Instead, you might stumble upon a herd of animals, bandits bushwhacking you at a roadside checkpoint, or perhaps a knight challenging you to prove your worth in battle. That said, there isn't too much to do in the wilderness besides hunting, clearing out bandit camps, or stumbling upon the occasional random event. Most of the time, the open world provides the set dressing while you traverse to the next quest on horseback. Where the open world of Kingdom Come really shines is in the cities and towns, which are extremely technically impressive most of the time. Okay, so there are the occasional hiccups, but despite that, the NPCs in Kingdom Come follow remarkably complex and detailed routines. You can watch as an alehouse maid fills up a pitcher of booze and then serves the patrons, a blacksmith humming a shanty while crafting a sword, or stonemasons working diligently on a large piece of wood. The world also reacts to your actions in ways that feel natural. Have a quality set of armor on, and villagers will address you as a knight in dialogue. Don't equip a torch at night, guards will get suspicious, and they might throw you in jail. If a group of bandits attacks you near a settlement, local sentries will come to your aid. You can even use this to your advantage in certain quests, especially when you're as under-equipped as I was. But we'll get into that later. That said, these systems don't always work perfectly. I've had situations where I'm being attacked, but the guards just tell me to holster my sword instead of actually helping, and eventually they joined in on the fun, and at that point I just accepted my fate. I could make an entire video about these NPC routines, but glitches and all, Kingdom Come Deliverance pulls you in with its attention to detail, historical accuracy, and realism. And that realism, it carries over into every aspect of the game, especially the combat. Like I mentioned in the intro, Henry isn't a knight in shining armor, not at first at least. He is a blacksmith's son, and your experience with combat will reflect that. In the early game, I did everything I could to avoid a fight. Usually, that involved waiting until nighttime and catching my enemies asleep. I employed these clever tactics for a solid quarter plus of my playthrough, preferring stealth over direct combat because honestly, I had no weaponry skills. But it was only after my first major boss fight with Runt, where I managed to win by spamming arrows while running in circles that I realized I probably need some actual combat training, which thankfully is found in Rattay through Captain Bernard. I'll be honest, I really like this feature. For the rest of the game, I found myself in a constant cycle. Get thoroughly beaten by a higher level foe, head back to Bernard for more combat training, and the cycle repeats. And after hours of training and improving Henry's skills, something finally clicked. The combat in Kingdom Come Deliverance delivers a satisfaction that few other games can match. Sure, the frustration is real. You start off weak, barely able to lift a sword, but the payoff? Unreal. That feeling of finally defeating that one enemy after spending hours honing your abilities is second to none. And by the end of your journey, you've transformed from a peasant who can barely lift a sword into a true master of the blade. And while I really do enjoy the overall combat mechanics, the system does have a few big issues that I hope are ironed out in the sequel. Primarily master strikes, which I think undermine almost everything that works so well about the combat system. You can barely attack, feints are seemingly useless, try to do combos, and you'll get continuously parried, the game almost forcing you to play defensive if you want to have success. Combat is reduced to clinch into stab or just staring, waiting for an opportunity to perfect parry. It almost feels like you're in a medieval staring contest, just waiting for the opportunity to master strike. The lock-on mechanic is also pretty clunky. In smaller skirmishes, it's manageable, but once you're up against more than 3 enemies, switching between targets becomes a real challenge. And while large-scale battles between 2 forces sound epic in theory, the game struggles to deliver here. And it's in these chaotic sequences where Kingdom Come really shows its weaknesses. Archery is also a bit broken. If you find the right spot in certain encounters, enemies will just stand there helplessly, practically begging for you to line up easy headshots. But honestly, I still like the archery mechanic. Like everything in Kingdom Come, practice makes perfect. Even if I did beat Sir Hans in the bow tutorial while drunk. In-game, of course.
I told you I have a heavy hand.
But while the combat and world building are front and center, what really ties everything together is the story. At its heart, Kingdom Come Deliverance isn't just about swordplay and surviving medieval Bohemia. It's about Henry's journey. The story starts off simple, a blacksmith's son looking to avenge his family and restore some kind of order to his life. But as you progress, it evolves into something so much bigger. And the way the game intertwines your personal story with the historical backdrop is impressive. Your character's stats, skills, and attire can influence the outcome of entire quest lines. For example, if you take the time to learn how to read, it will change the way certain quests play out. If you have high charisma, you can use your silver tongue to talk down enemies and uncover information you wouldn't otherwise get. If it makes logical sense, there's a good chance that you can do it and that it will alter the story in some way. The overarching story itself is pretty basic. A quest of revenge to retrieve your father's final sword. Yet where the game truly shines is in the mostly self-contained stories you will uncover as you make your way through completing the game. For example, setting up a duel between 2 rival blacksmiths in Sasau. The reason you end up in the village is to attempt to find out who is supplying copper sheets to counterfeiters. But showing up and investigating seamlessly takes off into a mostly standalone questline. One that requires you to choose which blacksmith to side with in a duel to determine the quality of each respective blacksmith's armor set. Relationships are also a big part of the game. Kingdom Come Deliverance does a great job in taking certain character relationships in ways that I personally never saw coming. Specifically talking about the major reveal with Sir Radzig. Sir Hans is another character that the game initially sets up as someone for the player to hate. However, just a couple quests later, and you get to witness Sir Hans and Henry become good friends. And Henry himself is a great character, although he does mention how hungry he is at the weirdest times. You can even romance multiple characters. Personally, I stuck with Teresa. Well, except for that one time with Lady Stephanie, and the night out with Father Goodwin, and maybe a few visits to the bathhouse. The game doesn't shy away from nudity either, which raises interesting questions about how games can be accessible to different audiences. For some, this is a fun addition, but others might find it problematic and it can influence people's purchasing decisions. which raises the question, why isn't there an accessibility option for nudity in video games? In the end, Kingdom Come Deliverance isn't about instant gratification. It's about the journey from a humble blacksmith's boy into a true knight. It's initially clunky, brutal, and sometimes downright frustrating, but it's also one of the most rewarding gaming experiences I've had. It's tough, but if you can push through the early frustrations, you'll be rewarded with one of the most immersive gaming experiences out there. So, if you're looking for a game that makes you earn every victory, this just might be the one. If you've made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you like or subscribe. It really does help more people find the channel. Also, drop a comment about your own experiences with Kingdom Come. Should be a pretty short turnaround with Firewatch, so stay tuned and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you again for making it to the end.